with such a, as I said, international group, august group of individuals who are all seeking knowledge. And I'm assuming a lot of this is around the coaching mentality. That's what this presentation is really about, is looking at the kind of key aspect of coaching and how the brain, how neuroscience, looking at it through the lens of neuroscience, can help with your coaching practice. I also have children, so you're hearing some of that in the background. I do apologize for that. So just a little bit, well, I'll share my screen now. We'll start a bit of a presentation, and I'll go through, my dad and I will probably go through, so I get to present with my father. It's a great honor for me. And as was mentioned, he's done a lot, written a lot of books, published a lot of papers, and he's just a very real individual, and it's always a deep honor and pleasure to be able to speak with him. So again, thank you for this opportunity to allow us to come together and speak. So I'll share my slides real quick. You can just tell me if you're seeing my screen. Is everyone seeing this?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. And so Total Brain Coaching, that's the title of the book that we published at the beginning of this year. Also, it's a two-part book, Total Brain Coaching and the Coherence Code. So just to kind of, we can start with introductions. And so you've done a wonderful job introducing us, so we won't have to do that. A lot of times, if the group's smaller, I'd have everyone say their name, profession, and an unusual habit. Like I have the habit of, before the presentation, brushing my teeth before I ever give a presentation. Even though, it's, you're not gonna be within the range of my breath, so that's good, but it's just a habit that I have, that I do, so I feel a little more confident as part of a routine. So if you want to, in the chat, if people could put their name, profession, and any funny habit that they want to share, that way, if we go through all 30 people, it would take quite some time. It would be very enjoyable, but this way we get to know each other a little bit better. There's a virtual bingo link in the chat, and I will go off this for a second. You'll be seeing my screen, and I will be calling up, oh yeah, here it is. So in the chat, if someone wants to repost, Oscar, would you want to repost that link?
Yes, I do.
Let me see, you're seeing my screen, but it's sort of. So if you take that link and you put it into a browser, you get a bingo card. And anytime you hear one of the words in there, you just click on it and it'll exit out. When you get a row across or a row down, just type bingo in the chat and put your email address, and I'll reach out to you after the presentation and either send you an electronic copy of the books, the Total Brain Coaching and Coherence Code, or a physical copy. Sometimes I've had a problem sending the physical copies to different parts of the world, but I'll do my best. Good. Is everyone good with that? Okay, good. So what is Total Brain Coaching? We'll go over that, and then we'll have a time for questions and answers. So we have, that's the virtual bingo link. That should be in the chat. And we'll go over a couple questions right in the beginning. Why did we create Total Brain Coaching? What are habits? How do we change habits? And again, what is Total Brain Coaching? We'll go through that. So why did we create Total Brain Coaching? I have been doing agile coaching for the last 10 years and coaching teams, sports teams before that. I ran a company at one point, so I was coaching lots of employees. And basically, I realized I have a kind of a background in computer science and also neuroscience. And of course, my dad is always talking about neuroscience and physiology and different things. His kind of main field is meditation. And he was talking about neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to reorganize itself, to rewire itself. And that's basically, as coaches, what we're trying to do all the time with the people that we coach, is we're trying to help them rewire their brain. And I realized there was a lot of insights and a lot of knowledge we could get from the field of neuroscience that could help us in the field of coaching, especially agile coaching. I've been on 2 or 3 different quote unquote agile transformations at different companies, and it's very difficult. You make some progress in some level, but you can't get the whole company. You can only get a piece of the company to follow these new patterns, and then some new CIO or CEO or somebody comes in, and suddenly a lot of the work that you do disappears. So I wanted to look to neuroscience to see how we could create lasting change in the business world. And what you realize is everybody functions from habits and behaviors. The culture of a company is really the reinforcement of these habits and behaviors. So the idea is, let's look at neuroscience and see how can we change habits? What kind of things can shortcuts or ways of reinforcement, patterns of reinforcement can we learn so that we can help people train their own brain to use these new agile or product type of mindsets rather than a waterfall or command and control type of mindset. So how I view habits and behaviors is paths in the brain. You can do these visualizations and you can see when someone is brushing their teeth or reaching for a glass of water in the morning or doing their morning run, there's different pathways in the brain that actually light up. So I almost feel like it's highways in the brain. And if you do something a lot, you create a big highway. So something like staying up late or running every morning. If you do it many, many times, you create these pathways. Now, a lot of times we want to change habits, like say something like smoking. That's something that people can do, cannot do. We're not judging that, but if they want to change that habit, a lot of times that's a habit that they've reinforced many, many times through repetitive action, through social structures. Their whole day is centered around the activity of taking a couple cigarettes. So it's like a highway. It's something that people travel. And if you wanted to say change that habit by running or by doing something else, chewing gum or something like that, if you look to the right, there's like a little road on the side. And that's like a new habit forming. And you have to ride down that road many times. You have to take a lot of energy to build up that road and to not go on the highway. So that's part of why it's so difficult to change habits, is because a lot of times we reinforce that. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me still?
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll go back to the slideshow. So the idea is that the habits that we reinforce, so if someone's been programming in a waterfall methodology for 30 years, that's going to look like this highway. And if we're going to try to teach them agile habits and an agile mindset, we have to start building a new road, and we have to get them to go to the new road and not take their old highway. And it takes time. There's a lot of studies that have been done. This is one showing, this is in London done. It's showing that even to just start that habit of drinking a glass of water, it takes 20 days to build that habit so that it's just automatic. When you wake up in the morning, you just reach for that glass of water. That'll take you 20 days if you're focused and you practice that habit and you reinforce it. If it's something like trying to do 50 sit-ups a day, it could take up to 84 days to make that a habit. So if we're thinking about changing the habits of the way that people work, things that they've done for years and years and years and are far more complicated than drinking a glass of water or doing sit-ups, we could see that it could take quite some time. And that's why it is hard as coaches, as scrum masters, as coaches in any field, to help people change their habits. But luckily we have neuroplasticity, and I'll let my dad talk about that and go through the next couple slides. Take it away, Dad.
Thank you. Thank you. The brain is quite remarkable. It's so amazingly flexible. Virtually every experience we have changes the brain. So just listening right now, there is a lot of rewiring going on in your brain. Those little children in the background that were making noise, they have phenomenal number of changes going on in their brain. I mean, literally millions of connections going on every minute. So our brain is amazingly dynamic, and it has the capacity to change, and that's good. That means that these habits, often when they're formed in early childhood, you can form new habits, and it's somewhat easier to form a new habit than try to change an old habit. There's a use it or lose it phenomena, and whatever you use, that gets reinforced. Whatever you stop using, that changes. Next slide, Ted, if you want. So experience, whatever experience we're having, will change the neural pathways. And these neural pathways, as Ted said, form the basis of habits. So we just have to give ourselves a new experience. Next slide. Now, the problem for most of us is that we live in a society which there's a lot of stress. And we form these habits in the brain that are very related to stress. I would say some people are even addicted to stress. And there's one area of the brain, the next slide, where it's a tiny, tiny area in the middle of the brain called the amygdala. And there's where all of our worst fears and phobias are stored. And when we set off that circuit, it's very hard for us to communicate, very hard for us to be working in a team or in any organization. So stress really is, counteractive to coordinated teamwork, to forming habits in which the communication flows. So we want to look for alternate pathways because stress is just too pervasive in the world we live in. And these stress pathways have sort of taken over. And when you have more cortisol being secreted, it dampens the immune system, which obviously isn't very good. It can destroy cells in the hippocampus, an area of the brain which regulates emotions and is involved with memory. So too much stress is not good. Next slide. So we wrote these books, which were really about how to rewire the brain. And we use some tricks here because changing habits can be difficult. So we created a system, and it's based on some very ancient knowledge from the Ayurveda system of traditional medicine in India. And it has a very beautiful knowledge about how each person is different. And the next slide. I think it's yours time, Ted. I'm switching back to you here.
Sure, thanks, Dad. Appreciate it. So just as Dad was saying, we had also both worked at companies which were selling type of Ayurvedic medicines, which is the traditional system of India. So we had that knowledge. My dad, of course, has the knowledge of meditation. We had the knowledge of neuroscience. I was doing the agile coaching. And so we talked about it, and we came up with 7 principles of total brain coaching, and it has an acronym of dharmic. So the 7 different principles are: first, discover your energy state; second, harness the neuroplasticity and gut-brain axis; third is the power of attention; fourth is using rhythm and resonance; fifth is a feedback matrix, so reinforcement is incredibly important; sixth is improve and integrate; and 7th is celebration. So we'll go through each of these in more detail. So the first principle is discover your energy state. And once an individual, team, or organization decides to make that change, it's very good that this thing that Socrates says, know thyself. if you have to have self-knowledge, everything is contextual. Everyone's brain is different. People don't have the same brains. And so a lot of times companies try to apply the exact same processes to everybody. And of course it has varying results because everybody's brain is totally different. So in the beginning, we have like a test, or not a test, but an assessment for individuals and for teams based upon the Ayurvedic medicine. So we'll go through that with you, this VP and K typing. There's also many other assessments, the DISC assessment, Kolbe assessment, Myers-Briggs. So the main thing is the first principle in changing habits through total brain coaching is to know the person that you're coaching and to know yourself. So you know how that's going to interact, or know the team that you're working with. So we'll go to the next slide. So as an individual, all of you can take this assessment, and we'll go through. If you could, all of you, we'll take, for the next 3 slides, we'll take about 2 or 3 minutes. And if you can add up the scores so that you know under this assessment, are you a V, a P, or K type? And we'll go through what each of those is. But the way you do this is read that first question. Are you a light sleeper? Do you have difficulty falling asleep? You strongly agree, score yourself as a 5. If you're a light sleeper, or if you disagree, sorry, score yourself as a 1. So if you're a heavy sleeper and you don't have any difficulty falling asleep. Likewise with the next question, if you have an irregular appetite, if you agree with that, then score yourself in the higher ranges. If you have a very steady appetite, then score yourself in the lower ranges as appropriate.
And somebody's pointing out that these questionnaires were sent out, so some people may have already done this.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So we can go through this a little quicker. There may be some people that haven't done it, but so I'll quickly just read the questions and people can score themselves. I'll do it a little faster than I normally do. So easily become overstimulated, does not tolerate cold weather very well, a sprinter rather than a marathoner. Your speech is energetic with frequent changes in topic. You're anxious and worried when under stress. So if you've done this already, fantastic. If you haven't, you'd want to then add up these scores, and that will be your V score. And I'll go to the next one, which is the P energy state. I'll quickly read through the questions, and again, just score yourself. Gut reaction, don't overthink it too much. Easily become overheated. Strong reaction when challenged. Uncomfortable when meals are delayed. Good at physical activity. Strong appetite. Good sleeper, but may not need as much sleep as others. Clear and precise speech. Becomes irritable and or angry under stress. Okay, and then you'll add up these numbers and that'll give you your P score. And then your K energy state. Are you a slow eater? Fall asleep easily but wake up slowly? Steady, stable temperament? Doesn't mind waiting to eat? Slow to learn but rarely forgets? Good physical strength and stamina? Speech may be slow and thoughtful? Possessive and stubborn under stress? So again, you'll have scored yourself on each of these questions and you'll add that up. And what that'll give you, we don't have to look at this slide quite yet. What that'll give you is you'll see which one is more predominant. So everyone's made up of all 3 of these qualities. And, but if you had a higher score in the V, then you'd be more of a V type. If you had a higher score in the P, you'd be more of a P type. Or if you had a higher score in the K, you'd be more in a K type. And again, everybody has all 3 of these. So some people may be what are called VP types or VK types.
What's particularly interesting about this is that there is quite a solid scientific basis to it. If you look at the research, you can find that, people have done genetic research and physiological research to show that these different types have different genes expressed in each of them, and they also have different physiological characteristics. Even their microbiome, that is the gut bacteria, they have a different composition. Each one of these has a different composition. And somehow this ancient science recognized that if you were one of these particular energy states, then you were susceptible to certain environmental triggers. And we'll go over those, but it's very valuable. It's kind of an epigenetic sort of thing. Okay, we're all born with a genetic code, but then the environment changes which genes gets expressed and which don't. And depending on what your initial state is, you're much more susceptible to having certain genes expressed or not expressed. So this is a very interesting kind of analysis, because it doesn't just give you some vague idea about your personality. It actually tells you how you interact with the environment, and most importantly, how you can increase your energy so you can perform better and be healthier.
Ted, can you
Yes?
please show the P questions again?
The P questions? Yes.
Thank you.
Now, as Ted said, most people will have a score where they're high on 2 of these. So they might be a VP or a PK. And that's fine. And then one score is usually less than the other. There are a few unique individuals who are even on all 3 scores. We'll talk about what the difference is and what it means to be one of these energy states.
So we need the K questions also.
Okay, good. Yes, understood.
Yeah, people are doing the quiz, I think.
Yeah, everyone wants to know what they are, so we totally understand. In every presentation, it's always like this, so no problem.
I remember when I was doing that first time, I was so, I was losing patience. I really wanted to know which energy state I have. So, yeah.
Good. So is it a good moment now? Can we go to talking about each of those energy states? I'm not seeing the chat because I have the presentation up.
Yeah.
So
I think we're good at, yes.
Okay, fantastic. So the V energy state, or Dad, do you want to go through these? Or?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you're a V energy state, these people are very creative and quite energetic when they're in balance. They're often your kind of people that are in marketing or advertising. They're artists, musicians. And the only difficulty is when they get out of balance, they can become a little anxious and even distracted. So it's very hard for them to maintain focus. So the key for a V energy state person is to have a very good routine and stay grounded. And there are some quite simple tricks that Ayurveda has which can help you do this. Something as simple as sipping some warm water throughout the day has an amazing effect for a V energy state person, helping them stay grounded. But they're the people that really don't like a routine because they like to be creative and dynamic, but they really need a routine. The next one is the P energy. And I often find when I'm looking at habit change books, they're very often written by P energy people. These are self-disciplined people. They have a sharp intellect. They're goal-oriented, very competitive. And so a lot of books are written by P energy people, and a lot of the readers are P energy people. So they get a very, oh, you tell me to do this, I'll do that, fine. But that leaves out a whole lot of other people who it's much harder for them to make a habit change. And the difficulty with a P energy state individual is that when they miss a meal, get overheated, then they get out of balance and they quickly become angry and aggressive. And so you might get a manager who's very sharp, moving everything forward, but then he misses a meal and suddenly gets very irritable and everybody is affected by him. Next one is the K energy state. And these are the kind of very steady, supportive, take a little longer to get things done, but then they're very thorough in getting things done. So they tend to be kind of the people that are involved with production, involved with procedures, making sure everything is done right, quality control. And when the only difficulty with them is that they can be a little too relaxed. So they have to become active. They have to get up, move around, do things. Otherwise, they get a little lethargic, stubborn, and even depressed when they get out of balance. So for a K energy state person, the most important thing is to be active and do creative things.
Good. So that's our kind of first principle, which is know your energy state. And we're going to do, so people probably have some scores. And so there was a little bit of knowledge, Dad gave some good knowledge there, where if you know which one was your dominant one, then you know if you're V-type, you want to make sure that you do have some routine, and the sipping of hot water can be very useful to keep you in balance. If you're a P-type, making sure you get your meals on time, you have proper routines, that'll keep you much happier. And if you're K-type predominant, you want to make sure that you have activity. If you're working at home at your desk, you want to get up, you want to move around more often than either the V or the P types.
And you can get a lot more specific than this. You can
Yes.
talk about what to do in order to go to sleep, what types of exercise you should do. You can talk about very specific foods that you should eat. Some foods are good for one type, not good for another. So the deeper you get into this, the more specific you can get in terms of how to increase your energy for each type. And that's very important for habit change, because if you don't have the energy, you're not going to make the change in the habit. It requires a rewiring of the brain, which involves this neuroplasticity and the gut-brain axis, both of which are energy requiring activities. So staying in balance is very important before you start to change your habits.
Yes, and Kalina wanted to make sure that I give the practical point. So I've used this with teams. I had a new team from production. They hadn't actually been exposed to much Agile or Scrum, maybe one or two individuals. And so I had them do this type of assessment. I also had them do the DISC assessment. I also had something called Colby, and some of them had done their Myers-Briggs. So I knew quite a bit about each of the members of this team. And I also knew the overall quality of the team, whether it was a VP or K type of team. And this was a very P type of team. So they needed routine, they needed structure, we needed to end very crisply. But there was one or two K types. So we had to make sure that we included them in all the different things. Now, Kalina's come up with a very cool way of measuring a group, and I'd like her to present that to you. It's a very cool technology. I'll escape. And we will look at what this group, if we're predominantly V, P, or K, and we can talk a little bit about what we would do with this group if we were all working on a project together. So do you want to share your screen, Kalina? Oops, did we lose her?
I am here.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, my dog was barking.
Okay, okay.
All right. So
Have I stopped sharing yet?
Yes, you can stop sharing. Can you see my screen?
Okay, good. I have stopped sharing. Good, good. Yes, I can.
Okay, that's perfect. All right. So I will just reset the slides, and we will present them after that. All right. So present. Okay, so Ted, do you want to explain what we're going to do? And I can explain how the people can access and vote.
So all of us are going to use this, we're going to go to the site, use this code, and we're all going to then mark ourselves for each of these. You're going to use the slider to kind of indicate where you are. And then we're going to get kind of a group. So this would be like if you were working with a team or you're working with a department, you could do this with them. It would be more for a team. Department would be kind of complicated. It needs to be a smaller group of people. So do you want to lead us in going to the site? I'll type it in to my browser.
So just go to www.menti.com and you can put the code 3921018. All right, so we can see that results are coming. I think we have only one vote so far. So we can see that on the bottom right corner.
Mm-hmm.
I will vote for myself. And by the way, Ted, we have David who has a bingo.
Good. So if you can put your email address, I will contact you afterwards. Good job on that.
Nice. Okay, so did everyone have the chance to vote? So, so that we can go to the next slide.
Okay, so let's just make sure we have this. So in terms of our V state as a group, we're about a 3. So that's good to know.
2.9, and it's still changing.
Right. So we'll have that. And then we
All
can.
right. So we're moving on the next slide, which is the P energy state.
So like, oh good, yeah, we just do the same thing.
Yes, you just continue following and voting. Those are not mine.
Those are mine.
Do you have a dog, Ted?
I have a 6-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old.
Okay. No pets.
Too
No
many
pets
kids.
and animals. All right, so we have 12, 13 people so far. If I remember well, we had around 20 people who voted on the first energy state. So I'll just wait a little bit until that number reaches 20. That's interesting. So the P is stronger than the other one, than the V. Okay, 21. Okay, so
Good. Do we have the K? I can't remember.
yes, we
No,
have it, but I need to start another presentation. So did you took a note on the result?
Yeah, so we had like 2.9, and now we have about 3.3, it looks like.
3.2.
3.2.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
All right, so the last energy state will be, so I just need to go back here and open another presentation because I'm using the free version of Mentimeter, which gives me the right to have, yeah, let's do that. That's the same. Gives me the right to have only 2 slides. Okay.
Good creativity, good creativity.
All right. So, yeah.
So we have to, different code, huh?
Exactly. So you need to go again to menti.com, and that time the code is 2216294. And it's only one slide. Okay, do you have problems to see the new presentation? The question is for everyone. So if you have problems, sometimes it might happen that Mentimeter detects that you already did a survey. If it's the case, you will see on the screen, thank you for your participation. So in that case, just go and click on exit and vote on another presentation, and it will exit you from the previous one. So you can put the new code, and this time it should work. All right. So it worked for me. I think we have a winner that.
Yes. Yeah, so we got to 2.7. So this is a predominantly P-type group, which with V close there and then K kind of at the end there. So this is actually similar to the group that I worked with. And so what we would do with this group, we would make sure we had a good routine. We had our meals on time. So we wouldn't ever go into lunchtime. We would cut it off right. We might even start like at 11:30, letting people go to lunch if they felt really hungry. We would also have very clear, this is a group that would probably appreciate clarity in their routine. They want some, creativity. Their V-type is also pretty close. But again, I think a strong routine would do well. And of course, as in any agile kind of thing, we would test something. We would say, okay, let's test this and try it. But this would give us a good jumping off point. Dad, would you want to add anything?
No, yeah, I mean, you just keep the air conditioning up for this group.
Yeah,
Probably likes
great.
it. That's one of the funny things. When you have partners, you might have, your wife might be more of a V type, and she likes everything to be super warm, and you might be a P type and you like everything to be cool. And so there's a constant battle on opening the windows on the air conditioning, so that you have to look and see how different people interact and make compromises so that they can work together. We have a whole section on the book which goes through, if you're a P coach and you have a V client, what that means, because it's a delicate interaction, and knowing the ways that you might trigger somebody's, stress points is good to know. So there are a lot of good information you can get out of it. But I love this team thing. This is great. Kalina, good job. That's very cool.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kalina. That's perfect. Great job on everyone participating. And I hope you've gotten some sort of practical vision of how this is used. And I have used it in my coaching. I will start sharing my screen again. Okay, great. And I'll go back to the slides a little bit. Good. So somehow that slide has gotten a little off. I don't quite know why. So the second one is talking about neuroplasticity and gut-brain axis. So this is also a very big principle. This neuroplasticity is kind of one of the core concepts behind total brain coaching. And gut-brain axis, they're both, and these are principles that come from neuroscience. Dad, I'm going to let you talk about them because that's,
I was waiting for you to
yeah, of course, of course.
You know, the interesting thing is we all used to think that it was all generated from our brain. You know, we used to think, oh, I'm stressed, it's coming from my brain. I mean, this problem is coming from my brain. Everything's coming from my brain. But recently we discovered the microbiome, which the 30 trillion friendly bacteria living in our gut. And believe it or not, that was something that people really didn't know. I mean, in different traditions, they might have intuited it, but we didn't have the technologies. Gene sequencing gave us all of a sudden the technology on how to study these bacteria because they're very hard to colonize. They like anaerobic without oxygen type of environment. So now we know about them. There are literally thousands of studies. They're implicated in every disease, and they're very much affected by a number of factors. The number one is what you eat.
Robert, we don't see the presentation.
I know, yeah, Ted, that's okay. Don't worry.
Okay, good. All right.
Ted's having some problems here, so we're going back to manual. We're out of video for the moment. And so the reality is that now we have to consider what we eat as being important. And many traditions have this. When you go to Chinese traditional medicine, you go to Ayurveda, any of these things, they emphasize diet. Modern medicine could care less about it. Most doctors weren't even trained in nutrition. They knew nothing about diet except for really basic stuff. Now we're recognizing that the composition of these bacteria can affect whether we're happy, we're sad. A lot of autoimmune diseases are felt to be caused by what's called a leaky gut. Again, this term is a word that nobody knew what it meant. It was used by chiropractors, health practitioners. Now you can find hundreds of papers in main journals about it. So this is the gut-brain axis, the nervous system, endocrine system, immune system, what's called the enteric nervous system. That's like a second nervous system lining the gut. The enteric endocrine system, a huge number of endocrine producing cells that, endocrine cells that produce all kinds of hormones in the gut. And finally, the gut bacteria. So we now have to have a bigger consideration about our life. We can't just go skipping meals, eating anything we want. We really actually have to consider food as medicine, and the different diets we take can affect us very much. The younger you are, the more you can get away with eating anything. As you get older, it becomes more and more evident how food is medicine and how you have to be careful. We also consider not only this gut-brain axis, but if you go back a slide, we consider that there can be super habits. Different people have different types of super habits. Some people do jogging, some people do yoga. The one we found, which is one of the best super habits, is meditation. Now, what do we mean by a super habit? We mean a habit that helps you form other habits. So people that learn to meditate find it easier to quit smoking and to reduce alcohol consumption. If they're addicted to drugs, they can get off the drugs easier if they learn to meditate. People that have PTSD, when they learn to meditate, have a marked improvement. People that have cardiovascular problems have marked improvements. Why is this? It seems that if you learn these super habits, they form these neural networks in the brain. I don't know if we have a slide for that, but these neural networks connect many parts of the brain, and they allow you then to learn simple habits easier. Maybe you want to jog, maybe you want to drink a glass of water when you get up, maybe you want to stop yelling at your kids, whatever it might be that you want to do. If you can get more energy, learn a super habit, it makes it easier for you to rewire your brain for other habits. So we, as a precursor to learning a new habit, we recommend learning something like a super habit, making specific changes in your daily life, whether it's diet or sleep or exercise. So it's kind of, we're kind of have the chicken before the egg. It's a kind of an infinite loop here. We're asking you to make changes in your life so you can make other changes in your life. But that's kind of how it works. If you have more energy, you can do things. So making certain changes will help. And then once you make those changes, then it's a lot easier to make other changes.
Can you hear me still, Dad?
Yep, perfectly.
Okay, great. So that was a big principle, this neuroplasticity, the ability for the brain to be able to rewire itself, and also the gut-brain axis. So taking into consideration that basically you have a second brain in your gut, and that can produce all the hormones and a lot of the different neurotransmitters. So that has a huge effect on the brain. So if somebody is trying to learn, say, agile, gain an agile mindset and learn the Scrum methodology, if their stomach's upset or they're not feeling good, they're not going to be able to learn that habit. And so if you're trying to learn new habits or trying to teach other people or help other people learn new habits, you have to look at the person and make sure that they're also in balance. That's one of the key points, is that you try to help the people that you're coaching or working with stay in balance so that they can change and adapt as quickly as possible. So the third principle is the power of attention. So the easiest way to create a new habit is to use the power of attention. So two things. One, when you put your full attention on doing something, so this idea of multitasking, just like we know from agile work, you want to focus on one thing and get it done. You don't want to open multiple items. It's the same for the brain. If you're focused on building a new habit, you want to fully focus on that. You don't want to be watching TV or doing other things if you possibly can. Obviously, there's a lot of situations where that's not possible.
And we skipped one thing, and that was when you're learning a new habit, we would have you go through a specific procedure. And that procedure would be, we would have you sit down, like say with a whiteboard. And Ted, you're going to go over this at the end.
Yeah, I'll show an example of all this at the end.
Yeah, so just to mention here, we would have you create a habit map and a habit plan. And Ted will show you those specifics as you go on.
Right. Good point. All right. You want to do the next couple?
Yeah, this one we've kind of already done. This one is talking about your inner rhythm. Each person has a different rhythm. So a Vata person will learn a habit quickly and then forget it real fast. A Pitta person will be very focused. Once they learn the habit, it'll be very easy for them to do it. Kapha person will take a little longer, but they'll stick to it longer. And once again, knowing your rhythm makes a huge difference, and setting yourself up to learn the habit makes a big difference. And you find that for each type, there are certain habits that are easier to learn than others. So we often try to help a person pick a habit that suits their type. And that enables them to get the confidence to move on to the next stage of this process.
So I can talk about the use of feedback matrix. So for maximum coaching results, we use 4 different levels of feedback. So there's self-feedback. So we might have a person journal. If let's say in a health field, so we use this in agility. We also work with coaches that use it in health field. We also work with people that use it in life coaching. But in health field, let's say somebody wanted to lose weight. That's a common one. Basically, we would have them journal the food that they're eating. That would be kind of the first level. that sort of that self-feedback loop. We'll have the next feedback loop is the coach. So it may be a coach. We always recommend working with coaches if you can. If not, it could be a partner, someone who's taking that role. So again, in that sort of the weight one, you know, that would be the person you would talk to every week and reinforce whatever habit you're working on. And then we also have a group level. So you want to reinforce it on the group level. You might join different groups, a running group if you decide that that's what you're going to do, but things that will reinforce it. And the final one is environmental coaching, which turns out to be one of the most important. The environment that you're in, it's one of the reasons why Agile and Scrum, when they are able to co-locate everybody, had a big kind of pop in production, because suddenly everybody was communicating a lot more because the people were right there and there were much faster feedback loops. It's the same, let's say if you're, again, working on the weight thing, and because we'll go through that example, just take snack foods out of the house, then you won't be snacking. So those are the 4 different types of feedback loops that we use within total brain coaching. The self-coaching, having a personal coach, having a group, and also environmental coaching. So using those 4 factors help tremendously in getting those reinforcements that you need to build new habits. And these are the different ones, the 4 coaching techniques. Number 6 is continuous improvement and integration. So we're measuring, so this is a lot of the agility principles, a lot of lean principles are built into the 6th principle. So the idea is that you take a baseline, you measure things, and this is to ensure that you can get rapid feedback. And you try to break things down into smaller and smaller pieces, just like we do with the work in agility and Scrum. The 7th habit, or the 7th, principle is success. And this is one I find, I'm working with teams right now at my work, and these are teams that they don't celebrate. And if you've ever watched a really good sports team, every time they do something, they celebrate. They have a little high five, or they're all hugging each other or something. But that is one of the best ways to reinforce a new habit, is to celebrate every time you get that little win. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It can just be a motion, a chomp, a victory sign. You raise your hands in the air, high-fiving, or it can be a gong. Sometimes we have like a little gong that we ring whenever we finish a story. So if you want to build new habits, making sure that you celebrate every time you do it is a great way to reinforce those habits. Dad, do you want to talk about the progress principle?
Sure. This just tells you that it's better to have positive motivators rather than negative motivators. So fear is not the greatest way to get a group to do something. It's been used in the past, but a lot of studies have been done. This was a study at Harvard that really found that when you have happiness and inner positive kinds of motivators, this really improves the whole performance. So positive reinforcement and celebrating. And we know this in our brain. I mean, we have what's called the dopamine feedback loop. So we get addicted to things. And when we like something a lot, it produces dopamine in the brain, particularly when you're anticipating having that. So the trick is to use that dopamine feedback loop for positive things rather than negative things. The negative things tend to be hard to quit. We get addicted to these negative things, not so good, including fear and stress. So we really want to use good positive habits and then use our built-in system. It's already there to reinforce it. We have a very powerful way to motivate us if we use our built-in dopamine feedback loop. So just this very simple idea of not use fear, but use positive emotions as a reinforcer.
Yeah, and you may get results. They have done studies that show you can get results with fear, but in terms of long-term sustainability, positive reinforcement or positive feedback is the thing that will make long-lasting changes. And a lot of times, obviously, fear shuts down the individual that you're working with. Their brain goes into fight or flight. And so they're operating at a much more basic level. So you're not tapping into the full creativity of the person. And you're not, when they're in that fight or flight situation, they're not learning. They're not gaining new habits. So if you use fear as motivation, you can get people to do it, but they're not going to become self-sufficient and learn and be able to kind of take whatever knowledge that you're trying to give them and then start to really build it into their routines. So this is an example. Kalina, this is a practical example when we coach someone. And I put my name here because we're protecting anyone. So we did the assessment. So this VPK, this person was very even, a little more pitta, a little, P. Dad and I will slip into using Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, which are the traditional Ayurvedic terms. For total brain coaching, we've said VP and K just to make it simpler. But of course, Dad and I sometimes slip into saying it because we've worked with these terms for so much. So they were a balanced person, but they needed to have a bit more of a routine. So that was what we noticed from that first principle when we did their VPK typing. This is step 2 is what you'd see where the goal was to lose 10 to 15 pounds. And so this is a habit map, and we came up, we could exercise more, we could skip meals, we could eat less, we could stop snacking, we could count calories, and I know we can't even read the top one, so we won't worry about that. But because they're a P-type, they can't really skip meals. So we don't want to do that. They could exercise more, but we know, just as health coaches also, that it's not more about exercise, it's much more about diet. So what we kind of honed in on was the snacking. And so we created a strategy based on their type and based on their habit map. So we used the third principle of putting full attention. So whenever they would eat a meal, they would take a bite. We knew that this person ate quite quickly. So the idea was if they ate more slowly and they enjoyed their meal more, then they'd be less likely to snack. So they would put their fork down after every bite, and they did that. That was one thing. Also, when they had the urge to snack, we had them drink hot water or warm water. We didn't want it too hot because they're a P-type, so you don't want to excite them too much, but warm water. And so we did that. Those were kind of 2 of the habits we used to get them towards their goal. So the principle 3, the coach using these principles in principle 3, so that's the rhythms and routines. So that was around eating. Then we also wanted to kind of increase their neuroplasticity. So we asked them to have a little bit better sleeping. They already had a meditation routine, and we asked them to be a little bit more regular. We looked for a food that might kind of help with neuroplasticity for them. Blueberries, it's not going to help much, but it was something fun. They liked that. And to make sure that they read a book at the end of the day rather than get onto the computer, because that would also help a bit with the neuroplasticity. In terms of the matrix, the 4 different matrix things, we had them journal what they ate. They met with their coach once a week. Their wife was also helping. They would report to their family. So we had them measure their weight every week, and the wife and the family agreed to do this and to do it in a positive, constructive, and uplifting way. And we just had them remove the snack foods from the cupboard. The wife had another cupboard with a lock on it, and so she could give it to the kids and herself, but the husband didn't have that ability. And you can see we did the weights, so we could see that weight coming down, and we gave them a celebration goal of a weekend retreat by a certain date and a certain weight. And this turned out to be a happy story where it worked and they were able to achieve their goal. And they've been able to maintain that, and they've kind of gone up a little bit over time. But then because they are kind of a V type, sometimes if you have strong V types, and I've noticed this also in agile coaching, they can learn something really quick, but then they get bored with it and you have to change up their routine. So we've actually done different things with this person to kind of change up their routine because of that V type. We noticed that they were getting a little bit tired of just doing the same thing all the time. And then their weight would kind of slip back up. So that's a practical example of us using this total brain coaching with someone in a health situation. And I've used a lot of the different principles in my agile situation. So that's kind of the, that's our presentation. Dad, did you have more that you wanted to say at the end?
No, that's fine. We can take questions.
Yeah. I will turn off the screen.
You might mention the coherence code is a story.
Yeah. So this was a wonderful, sorry, can I tell it, Dad? Or?
Here, you go right ahead.
So I had read the Phoenix Project. I don't know if many of you have read that. It's a wonderful book about sort of DevOps and DevOps journeys. And basically, that's kind of a business fable where you read that story and it has the principles that they're trying to teach you woven into a story. And I like learning that way. And I worked with Dad on the total brain coaching, but he happened to have another story that he could apply to this. So that's why the coherence code came out with total brain coaching. So coherence code is a business fable, and I find a very amusing and fun one, which kind of has the total brain coaching principles woven into it. So you learn it in a more fun way, which is my experience that I had with the Phoenix Project. So that's why the two are kind of usually together. Total brain coaching is much more, here are the principles. And it's interesting, if you go to the Total Brain Coaching website, you'll see we have these 7 principles. Within each of those principles that you just learned about, there are tools. So you can create protocols from the tools. And so the whole point of Total Brain Coaching is it's an open source type of coaching protocol. It's not proprietary. So people can create their own protocols based upon these principles and tools and test them. And the main one we've been testing is the one that we just showed you. And we've tested it with a lot of people, or a good number of people, and we've had some good success with it so far. But you can go onto the site and you'll see some of the results that we have there. And there's a counter at the front, and we have a goal to help, I think 1 million people change habits or make a positive difference in their life. So anytime anyone buys a book or takes a course, then we add something to the counter. So it's kind of a fun way for us to go for a goal.
So Ted, there are a lot of questions in the chat.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, all right. So the first one I have here is from Susmita Vemprawa from Houston, Texas. Do you just do this questionnaire with the client when you start to work with them on a coaching agreement? So it's about the energy quiz.
Yes. So normally when people work with me, they know that I have this total brain coach. So it's easy for me to say, oh, this is part of the protocol that I'm working with. And would you like to do it? So I give them that choice. I think 9 out of 10 times people have said yes. And then I'll share my screen one more time. I'll show you our website. There is a link to a quiz that we built, which people can go online and take it themselves, or you can just take those questions that we went through with you. So I'll quickly go online and go to Chrome and Total. Funnily enough, it's right there. So we'll see. It seems my internet's a little slow today. So things come up. We've had we could increase that number a little bit. We haven't done that. So it has the books. We're about to teach a course on this. So we're actually teaching a 6-lesson course in the next 2 weeks. We start that. And we're working with some other very high level coaches, Pat Reed, and who's the other coach, Dad?
Warren Blank.
Warren Blank. So they're also, we're kind of bringing coaching to the community that we're in, and to the students at the university. So this site has some of the knowledge that we talked about, but in the middle, it has this energy state quiz, and you can click on that. And that's an easy way for you, if you're doing one-on-one coaching, they can just go and do this and then share their results with you. I'll stop sharing. Did that answer the question, or is there more needed on that?
Yes, you did.
So there's another question from Susmita. If there are 2 winners for the bingo, then looks like I got the second bingo.
Yeah, so there's as many winners as people who got bingo. So I'll put my, so you're good to go. I'll put my, I'm going to put my email address here. Just send something to me. You may have put it in here, but just to make doubly certain, if you can send something to tedtalktoday@gmail.com, then I will work with you and get you those.
Okay, good. So there is another one, a really nice presentation. Thanks for that. Where is the process describing those 8 steps?
So it's on the website. So you can go to Total Brain Coaching, and that has it. And then it's more in depth in the book. It's in both books, but it's more in depth in Total Brain Coaching book. In the Coherence Code, there's actually quite a bit of it there too.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Like I can write in the chat.
Oh, okay, Sandra.
Okay, so thank you so much for this presentation. I realize how much our society is addicted to fear, because sort of the pattern that is created by social media, by television before, is pretty much into this fear pathway. And the food that we eat, highly histaminic as well, that creates all these bad patterns and habits. So I see our society pretty much into that path, and a lot of resistance to change, particularly when you start discussing food with a corporate person. I feel so much resistance to this holistic approach, and it's for me so obvious that we need to take the question this way and to have self-awareness. And I feel like alone, very alone, because people, when you start tapping into habits and things that go more deep into the self, I find a lot of resistance, and I find a lot of difficulties to bring this type of message. So what's your advice when coaching? I don't know if I'm very clear or not.
No, I understand. No, and it's something I've, of course, run into. So I'm subtle with it. I'm not like overbearing or saying like, oh, I have this book and you have to do this thing. That probably won't work. I look for opportunities. So, when someone is having a hard time learning something, we say, oh, well, are you actually feeling good? That's something like, because that has a big weight on basically whether or not, you're going to be able to pick up these new habits and things like that. The other thing is you'll get these early adopters that are V-types because they like the new shiny stuff. But they're easy to let go of things too. So it's like they adopt it and it's great, you feel good, and then they let go of it. So you have to make sure you know who those are, so you keep it new and fresh for them all the time too. You get the P-types and they just want something that they can do. And the K-types usually take a little longer, but then they're the ones who maintain that through. So
It's also, I think the world is changing.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah.
I mean, when I started my research, back in the 70s, it was nobody was even interested in any of this stuff. So you were very fringe if you were interested in this. But now it's mainstream in science. So it'll take a while for the world to catch up. But the reality is that, we are discovering that meditation can reduce cardiovascular disease, that it's simpler and much cheaper than taking all the drugs. We find that, changing diet has this huge impact that we never even imagined before. And that, taking toxic substances can really disrupt the body. So it's just going to take a little while for the science that's coming out to catch up. The doctors are the slowest. They just, they learn something in medical school. They literally don't know anything new. So it's very difficult. They're giving you all the same old information. But, this is a world where people have taken greater responsibility. I mean, in some ways, COVID has caused people to become more concerned about their mental state, about their health. And once the world catches on, like once a big company gets the idea, ooh, I could sell this, then the customer actually changes how the world markets things. So if enough customers say, I want organic food, I want non-GMO, I want the food to, that's fresh and so forth like that. I mean, the markets nowadays cater to those people. There's tons of probiotics. There's all kinds of things out there that people, if you go to certain websites like Dr. McCullough, 40 million people a month are on that website looking at alternative health. So believe me, as customers, we can have a huge impact on the world. Headspace, is a app where they teach people to meditate. It's not very effective, but they have millions of people because everybody wants it. So it's just going to take a little while for science to sort out what are the most effective tools. And we as customers can drive the market to give, to get what we need, what we want. And science just takes a little while. And, the microbiome is huge, how it's impacting the food market. And meditation is huge. That was a word you couldn't even use before. Now yoga and meditation are commonplace. If you go to Google, yes, they have a place.
Down dog app.
It's
great.
It's happening, maybe a little too slow, but it's happening. And somehow, bizarrely enough, COVID is actually helping it because people are getting more and more concerned. How can I build up my immunity? What can I do I don't want to catch this. What can I do? And so it's kind of nature is pushing us in the right direction.
Yeah. Back in 75, a guy called, I don't know if you know about the book called Sugar Blues.
Sure.
Have you heard of this book?
Yeah. No, I read all that.
It's written in 75. I mean, it
well,
explains
it's
medicine.
Very difficult because if you look at the chemistry of how sugar affects the body and how it affects different people, it's very complicated. And the food industry has lied to us. There was a paper that just came out in one of the top journals, which revealed how the sugar industry had given money to key researchers in the 60s for them to not include sugar in their studies and put all the focus on fat. So I don't know if you remember, but there was a 7-country study. There was all this stuff that came up about how if you stopped eating fats, then you could reduce cardiovascular disease. And so they had margarine, they had all these fake oils, and they were actually worse than natural foods. And it all turns out to be a hoax. I mean, it's ridiculous that the sugar industry paid some of these super top people to do this, and they just didn't include sugar. So we still don't know what the effects of sugar is. And, books like you're talking about, people still don't believe it. Very complicated how sugar interacts. And is it is it fructose or is it glucose? Because fructose, what happened was when they got rid of fat, all the packaged foods, they had to add salt and sugar to make it taste good, because fat made foods taste good. And when you took out fats, presumably for health reasons, you had to add something in. So they stacked in sugar and they stacked in salt. And so we eat so much more sugar than we've ever eaten before. But some people, they don't care. It doesn't affect them at all. Some people just devastates them. Still, science has not figured it out. So you have to pretty much experiment for yourself and see what's good for you and what's not good for you. I wrote a whole book, The Rest and Repair Diet, where you eliminate sugar, eliminate gluten, eliminate milk for 3 weeks, and then you reintroduce them. It's the only way you can really tell if something affects you or not. You have to eliminate it for a while, and then you have to reintroduce it. And then you find out real quickly, is this good for me or is this not good for me? So you have to be the testing ground. Science is so confused right now. You go on the internet and I can show you 40 papers that say that sugar is terrible for you. I can show you another 40 papers that say, no, sugar's fine. It doesn't cause any anti-inflammatory. And there's no way you can sort out these papers. I've looked at them all. It's crazy. It's just confused. So you got to be your own experiment, or you have to, test it on yourself, find out what's good for you, and then you can make the habit change.
And it's interesting because we ask our teams as Agile coaches or Scrum Masters to do the same thing. We ask to do small experiments and then to kind of figure out what the path is. And it's the same for us on that level. We got about 5 more minutes. So do we want to do a few more questions?
So we have around 6 questions not answered in the chat.
We'll answer them very quickly. You ask them, we'll answer them in 30 seconds.
Okay. Okay, good. So we'll do as much as possible, all right? If there is a strong K person in the group, but average has a skew towards P, will K type suffer?
So in the group that I worked with, it was a P group and we did have some K types. So you have to do the individual and the group. And then you can also bring that knowledge to the group. Says, look, dominant, we're a P type, but we have this K and V type. So how are we going to include them in this? We know that their tendencies are that way. So yes, you want to use that knowledge to make people feel included, not excluded. A beautiful question.
Nice. Good. So there is a comment from Alvaro. So he's struggling to understand number 4. I think number 4 from the
rhythm, your R, your inner rhythm. It just has to do with everybody. It's almost like a wiring in the brain. You have a kind of a system in your brain, and it processes information differently. So a V-type processes information very quickly, but that rhythm shifts quickly and it's not as accurate. A P-type is kind of medium processing, but very purposeful. And a K-type is very slow processing, but very accurate. So when you are aware of your own inner rhythm, it helps you to make changes in your life.
And I just add quickly to that, that also using the rhythms of nature too is very useful, making sure that you're getting the right amount of sleep, that you're, if you're a morning person, or evening person, you need to figure that out, but you need to maximize the rhythms of nature also. We go through some of the things in the book talking about a little bit of that too.
Okay, thank you.
So there is a question from Carol Ann. Is the gut-brain axis addressed in one of your 2 books? We hear a lot of extensive supplements that can be, yes?
There's 2 other books that I've written. If you look under my name, Robert Keith Wallace, on Amazon, you'll see a bunch of books. But there are 2 other books where I really focus on the microbiome and the gut-brain axis. And one of them is called Gut Crisis, and the other is called The Rest and Repair Diet. And most of the information is on a website, and I'll type in that website in the chat. It's a website that you can find the books, and you can also find quiz. You can find a lot of good information about sugar. Almost everything you want is on this. Oops, I spelled it wrong. Gut.
And there, I know in that question there was, you know, is some of it a scam? Is some of it not real? You know, that kind of thing. Dad did a nice thing where he rated a lot of the supplements based on different factors. So it's more of a, you know, he's not selling any of these products. So he's just looking at it from a scientific basis of what the most effective products are. Again, though, everybody's different. So you have to test, and then you try it on yourself, you know, and then you see how you feel. And that's how you really know, because everybody's completely different.
Okay, so essentially, there's no way in solving that leaky gut problem without any supplements, like without regular food. Is that what you guys
you
are
can
saying?
do it. You can do
Okay.
it. The rest and repair diet. You can. There's a lot of traditions have figured this out. The body can heal itself. That's the great thing. But you got to give it a break. If you just keep eating the same foods over and over again, it just causes inflammation, and the gut never gets a chance to heal. So this rest and repair diet, just for 3 weeks, you just eliminate certain foods, and then later you reintroduce them. So it's not a big radical change, but it gives a period for the gut. And then bone broth, if you're not a vegetarian and you can handle bone broth, it's very, very good for healing the gut. So it all in there, all the recipes are in there, all the details. There's some simple detox stuff, but I put together what I've learned from integrative medicine and all the stuff from Ayurveda in there. You know, everybody's different. So it's not like everybody's going to get better, but a lot of people do, because the body can heal itself amazingly well.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you. You guys are phenomenal. You've done a great job, and congratulations on your career. You said you started working on that in 1970. That's 50 years ago. Wow, thumbs up. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good. We're at time, but if we could answer the last 2 questions quickly, if people have to go off, we of course understand.
Okay, 2 questions. First one will be, which would be an effective way of meditation? I think it's more for Robert.
Yeah, I mean, I've studied a lot of different techniques, and the one that I like the best is Transcendental Meditation. And it's perhaps the best studied. It's perhaps the easiest technique. Mindfulness is much bigger right now, but mindfulness, you know, I just wrote a book. It's called The Coherence Effect. It's just coming out. And I give tons of research. I give tons of testimonials. I just think that Transcendental Meditation is a more effective and better technique. But, you know, you got to try what you're going to do. If you want, you can try mindfulness. There's so many things you can try. You know, Zen meditation. You can do focus meditation, lots of different things. I'm a little biased, so you're getting my opinion. Sorry.
So yeah, again, it's the same principle. You have to experiment, you try, you see what works for you, give it the right space. In terms of the research, Dad's done a ton of research on TM, so you're getting that viewpoint from that. But it's a good viewpoint. I mean, he's devoted his life to that too.
Okay, so last question. How would you change fear management coming from executives into compassionate leadership at the end of a project which is definitely not able to deliver on time?
You know, this question is so open-ended, it's impossible to answer. I mean, everything we did is about this. Everything in the books is about this. Every book we've ever written is about this. I'm at a university where you can take a lot of free courses at this university. We have 20,000 people taking a free course on yoga asanas right now. We have another 12,000 taking a course on Ayurveda right now. And we have a course on the gut brain axis, which we just released. We have a master's degree in integrative medicine in Ayurveda. So I mean, what you're talking about is the next generation of executive coaches. And everybody agrees with you. You are saying it perfectly. There's so many books out there. There's so many people that agree with you. And that's what our lives are devoted to, is changing the world from fear-based to compassionate-based.
That's wonderful. So let's end the.
I'll put in the university, miu.edu.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Last. Okay. So that's, if you want to see these free courses, they're there.
So there's that comment from Angela Blake from Toronto, and I really want to read it. I love how it's connected over directly to Agile coaching and Scrum mastering, the holistic approach, and I'm so inspired. So I think it's really powerful and really mindful what is written there. So thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your time, and just wishing you the best and all safety and happiness. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you for sharing. Bye-bye.